the workshop, you know what it's about, right? We've announced it. It's all about now going one step further with your planning for the showcase and prepare an outline for your presentation or even a script. There's a template that we've created that should be helpful. And also to create some slides. And some of you already have some slides, which is great. So you can make them even better or customize them to what you want to say at the showcase. And then others have not yet started, and that's fine too. And so we want to help you in either case. We have 2 breakouts today, roughly 55 minutes in total, 30 and 25, more or less, where you'll be working hands-on on your scripts in little groups. So that's the focus. Out of 90 minutes, hopefully we come close to 55 minutes just working on stuff, right? That's what we want to help you with. But there's a few good practices we want to give you on the way on both topics and also show you how they connect. Yeah. So how do the script and the slides or the outline, your story that you have planned and the slides connect? Nice one. So I think you can see my screen. I hope so. In terms
all looking good, Fred. All looking good.
Thank you, Lucas. We've covered quite a lot of ground. We're in this pitch prep session that builds on the previous session from last week. And of course, we've got the showcase coming up, but really it's not the end of the journey. Your crowdfunders, if you're doing them, will continue far beyond the event. In fact, the event is only the kickoff for that period of roughly 4 weeks to crowdfund. And of course, your social enterprise hopefully might be a lifelong endeavor, or at least a very long-term endeavor. So, the program has a timeline, but the support doesn't go away beyond the program. We will work with you. So, don't stress out just because this is the last normal group workshop. You will have access to your coaches, to Spark, and you can also always ask questions during the program and then after as well. So, just because you see this timeline, that's just for workshops. It's a workshop timeline, not a support timeline. The agenda, as I said, first, an introduction to how to script or outline your story, a breakout to do that with advice or, just check in from Hormos, Jane, Lucas, and I. So we're going into 4 breakouts with small groups. And then we'll take hopefully there's time for it, a short break. There should always be time for breaks. And then we'll talk briefly about best practices on your slide decks. And then hopefully we have enough time for roughly 20 to 25 minutes to start working on your slides, which should be based on the narrative of the script. And at the end, we can tell you a tiny bit how you can use Spark in the next few weeks to get support from myself, and when he's available, Lucas, because Lucas is busy now. For the next few weeks, he's just kicked off a new program to work on the scripts and the slides. And then also briefly talk about your crowdfunding campaigns. There's a little bit more support there that you could use if you want to. You've heard about this last week. You've heard about it plenty. The showcase is the kickoff of the crowdfunding campaigns for those who will crowdfund, which will be probably nearly all of you, perhaps all of you. And it is on the 8th of June from 5:30 to 7 p.m. Sorry for repeating myself, but just to be clear, want to make sure you're ready that day and available, right? So it's also about scheduling or under scheduling, as they say. So don't book anything in the afternoon that day if you can. And if you are at work, please ask for permission, to be free that afternoon and be deliberate about it. So protect your time for this important moment. You know about the event and what we're trying to do. You're presenting your idea. That's definitely everybody's objective. It's about your voices, but you will also launch your crowdfunders and hopefully other ways of getting involved with you, such as your volunteer request form, for example, if you'd like to have volunteers. And it's roughly a 15-minute slot for you. And I know Hormos has his hand up, so I'll give him the word in a second. And in the 15-minute presentation, you will have, room to play, but hopefully you won't be presenting much longer than, 6 minutes on your business itself, Then you can introduce your crowdfunder if you're doing one, and any other asks to the audience, and then hopefully you can have an interaction with them because they would have chosen to be in this room with you. Homos, do you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, it was just to do with what's there, and you've said it yourself that if you're doing the crowdfunder, if you're not doing the crowdfunder, do not worry, but just be very clear about your ask. It becomes even more important to be really clear about how people can help you to progress.
So true.
Yeah.
So true, Hormos. Thanks for bringing in the examples. Lucas is writing some examples on the chat box. So to illustrate what else you might ask on the day. So as Homo says, be clear about whatever you ask the audience to do and feel comfortable with showing more than one ask. So for example, crowdfunding and a volunteer application form, or crowdfunding and a partnerships request, but do prioritize the one that you find is most important or that would benefit the most from exposure in that event, right? Because we will also share your asks, any links to them or your contact details after the event with the audience, and we will then go into turn at least, and Results CIC will go into overdrive in terms of trying to promote your campaigns and your asks as much as possible. And so I think you will too, right? So again, it's just a kickoff really of another period of 4 weeks of really campaigning, right? So remember the format. That's what we're working towards today. Know your audience. You might have volunteers there. Maybe they'll help you pick tomatoes or something else. You might have donors and funders there, and you might have partners there. It's going to be a mixed audience, also a bit of general public, but people will be there because they want to see you. They want to hear from you. They're there to support you. They're interested and curious about your idea. And actually, if they can get involved, it's so much more exciting, isn't it? So whether it's giving a small donation, sharing about your crowdfunding campaign, applying for a volunteer role, or contacting you to set up a meeting to hear more about it, So the results could be many. I'm just going to skip this part. So know your audience, understand who's going to be there, and make sure people can see it, understand it, feel it, and ultimately take action, right? You'll need an outline, a clear narrative. As I said, that could be a script even. And it would be great if you could show some visuals as well to bring the story home. I'm just gonna skip this part here. We will go into the scripts in just a minute, and I'm just going to use one of the scripts as a working example to just show you in practice. So just give me 1 second. You will find the scripts inside your folders. I think some of you have actually worked on it. Yusuf, I can see you've worked on it. Do you mind if I open yours?
Very little, a couple of sentences, I think, but yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for the permission. So Yusuf has started, and good on you for giving it a go. We have created a template which you don't necessarily have to follow like that, but you could if you feel the narrative makes sense. In the end, you have to write your own story in it. So it's a Google Doc, and you can collaborate with us on it, with the coaches and with the Spark team, and get feedback from us. But let's start first with the structure of it. We've got a script which would roughly give you a total of 6 to 7 minutes, hopefully. Hopefully we've done the math correctly. We have indicated roughly how many words you might want to write in each section. This might seem very formal, but it's just an indication. You can, of course, change how long it should be, but if you want to land on 6 to 8 minutes, this is roughly what you might want to do. Just like today, when I welcomed you, it would be great if you could welcome your audience. Even though Turn and the keynote speakers will have introduced the session, you should still welcome them to this moment with you and to your moment with them, right? Make them feel welcome. So that's the first part. Introduce yourself very briefly, seeing as they don't know you personally yet, at least most of them would not, and then welcome them and make sure they are acknowledged. There might be 10 people in the room with you, there might be 15 people in the room with you, maybe it's 20 if we're lucky, but at least you will have a nice audience there. So make them welcome, and just in a nutshell, summarize that you're a social entrepreneur, what your idea is, but only in like a few sentences I would recommend at this point, and say why you're here today, just in a nutshell. Then some of you might decide to tell your own story of how you decided to start this social enterprise. It does not have to be from the cradle. My parents walk through the forest with the dog and they tell everybody our whole family's history. And people kind of zone out, not against my parents, but this is not the best practice with a presentation. However much I love them, I would also sometimes kind of fade out. So no, tell them what matters to you about your story in relation to this moment, right? And how you got there, but it doesn't have to be the whole origin story unless you want to, right? I mean, it's your right, but you only have a certain amount of time. So you have to make choices. You don't necessarily have to speak about yourself, but people do want to connect. And even though it's about your business idea and your social impact, they do want to trust you, that you're ready to do it, that you believe in it, and you need to excite them. So it could be good to have an element of your own story. But once again, it could include your professional background, maybe why you're passionate about the social or environmental issue that you're tackling, or the people that you want to support, and why right now is the right time for you and for the world. Yes, Hormos.
Just go back to the last session as well, in terms of that opening bit, which is where we're at now. And I remember Jane suggesting that you start with a question to the audience, something that really kind of makes them think. So that initial bit is quite important to grab people's attention somehow, and again, if you look at the handout that was sent before the last session, there are some different ideas as to how you can open things up in a more unusual way, rather than saying, this is where I come from, this is my background, etc. Just with something that gets their attention. So bear that in mind.
That's a great shout, Hormos.
Yeah.
And thank you, Hormos. And actually, if you want, and this is the cool thing about any such template, you modify it, make it your own. This is just there as a kind of like some guardrails, like the bicycle with the little wheels. But if you want the wheels off, that's great. I mean, go for it. In fact, you could right-click on this table into a row. This is one row, and you could add a row, insert below, and then you could say provocative. Sorry, Yusuf, I'm going to turn it back in a second. Provocative question. Sorry, not provocation in a bad way, but in a good way. Provocative question to the audience, or opening question, right? Not everybody has that ready to go, but you could develop it and you could scrap the story, for example. So it is up to you. And that's a great suggestion, Hormos. I'm just going to go back so that Yusuf's work stays intact. Sorry, Yusuf, but we're back to where you were before. You can always go back on Google Docs, which is good. And let's move on from this story. You could also tell the story of your team of volunteers. It's not just about you. If other people are involved, of course, do mention them. It's important. Your team matters. Then it is time to not keep that from them for too long. Some people really wait for this long reveal until they say what the mission of the organization is. But, people need some anchor, some hook, some clarity relatively early on, in my experience. So it is important to mention your mission statement, why you do what you do, and if you have values articulated, so expressed already, written down somewhere, for example, you could mention your values. So Turn's values are enterprising, always improving, participative, and Lucas, this is why you test your team. What's the fourth one?
I can't remember. It's terrible. It's been a long day. It's been a really long day.
Yeah, see, sorry, Lucas, I know you do. I know you do. So it's just not to put you on the spot for a bit of humor, Lucas. So
respect and curiosity.
That's a new one, but we love it too. Absolutely, we believe in that. But the point is, in terms of, compassion is our fourth value, just to be clear. But Lucas, that was just for humor's sake. I know you know them, but people care about the values. Sometimes actually really connect with those values, and so whether they volunteer or donate to you, it might be just as much about your values as it might be about your mission. So this might be something to bring in here. Ultimately, the social impact you want to have will become clear from the next sections. If you want to tell them about the social problem or the users that you want to address, you can do that next. Like you can go into more detail why these people, why this environmental issue, what is the problem that you're trying to solve for people, the planet, or both? And then how do you do it? So what is your solution, right? And what are the unique things about you? So the features of your idea that stand out from others, right? What are you adding to the world that nobody else does, or at least in that unique combination? Okay, think of them as your unique selling points or features of your idea that stand out. Now, sometimes that's enough on all the detail of how you do things or what you do, but some of you have already got a really big vision that you can't achieve in the first year or 2 years or even 5 years. And it might take a while to have that long-term vision, or maybe that is already there and it's actually harder for you to talk about here and now. It depends on the person and the business. But if you do have a difference between the 1 year vision and the 5 year vision, then people can get really excited about the potential. So the big vision is about the potential. So Turn wants to help, now we know 5 years after we started, we know that in the next 5 years, we want to help 4,000 people with improving their livelihoods through their own ideas. Great. But we didn't know the numbers or why we were doing that 5 years ago. So, no pressure. You don't have to talk about that. But if you have this mega big thing that you can't do now, but that would excite people to get hooked, then you can mention that. Yeah. For example, here. But I do think the concrete is important. So you got to think about the sequence. You got to make it your own. If the narrative doesn't flow well for you the way it's outlined here, you can shuffle the sections around, which is relatively easy. You could right-click here, insert a row above. You could then copy this part, just mark it like this, paste it up here, delete the other row where it originally was, and you've just changed the sequence, So again, Yusuf, my apologies. It's back to normal. But you can shuffle things around if you want. And if you need help with that, technically speaking, with a document, we can help you with that too. So just ask, okay? After the big vision, if you have already got some evidence, whether it's third-party evidence, so, statistics on the social problem you're trying to solve or on the type of solution you're offering, or feedback that you have received, even just from a survey, or from real users that you might already have. I'm thinking of Basel here, who has so many users already. What feedback has he gotten and how can he express it here? If you have any evidence, numbers, or maybe you're familiar with research, so qualitative, so in other words, words and statements, bring it in if you can. It's useful, just half a minute or so about key evidence that suggests that you're on the right track, that you're doing something already, or that you should be doing something specific based on data, statistics, or human comments, whether it's experts or users, right? Like, for example, your clients, your beneficiaries. Okay, so you could bring that in, but again, if you don't have it now, that's fine. Then keep that for later and skip this part for now. That's fine. Now, this is where we go to the highlight, really. I mean, of course, the highlight is your mission, your values, and those things, and yourself. But the highlight for the audience is ultimately, what can I do? What can I do to help you? Now I like you. Now I like what you want to do. What can I do? Is this something I can get involved with? Well, if you have a crowdfunder, this is the moment. spend 2 or 3 minutes not just talking about the fact that you are fundraising, but what you are fundraising for. So what would you use the money for? If you can, you spoke with Bertie about this, you could differentiate. If you get £500, you can do this. If you get £1,000, you can do that. If you get £2,000, you can do more. Okay, explaining that, but not in too much detail, just the highlights. And also, what do they get out of it? Is it a thank you, which is fine, or is it a reward? You spoke about this with Bertie, but you need to you summarize what you're currently writing down on your crowdfunding page, right? So you summarize that. Of course, they can then read the details as they visit it. You will have to finish with a QR code and a bit.ly link, which is what you know from Turn and Results CIC. We use scannable QR codes for people to bring up a site on their phone. And we also tend to send on the chat box a link so that they can click on it from their computer as they're listening, so that they can have it open. Maybe they'll act right away, but maybe they'll keep listening during the session and then they'll return to it during a break, after the session, etc. Right? So you do want to have the link to your crowdfunding campaign ready by that point, and also create a QR code. And if you have problems with doing that yourself, we can help you. We can either teach you or we can do it for you, no problem. But do communicate if you're stuck with that, because we want to make sure you are ready to go. And if you have other ways of getting involved, like partnerships or volunteering, like Homo said, you can mention them here too, either in addition to the crowdfunding ask or instead of, in case you plan not to crowdfund this time. So that's the structure of the script. Homos and Jane rightfully pointed out that not everybody wants to write out a script and read off it during a presentation, which is why you could also go for bullet points. You could also start with bullet points, write the script out a bit further based on your bullet points in these sections, but then later only use the bullet points to actually deliver the session, kind of printing out this document, having it on your side as a reference point. But really, when you're screen sharing from your slides, from your pitch deck, you might actually just talk to the slides, and your bullet points, you've already memorized it, or not memorized it word for word, but the core content, so it flows. If you practice, it flows. If you don't have time to practice, it might be useful to just read from the script. Depends on the person, like Homos and Jane said. So we don't want to force you to do anything, and you can choose how you want to write in this document. You don't have to use it, but I would really appreciate, or we would really appreciate, if you could have a outline, whether it's in this format or not, because it will help you be prepared, and being prepared, as we know, helps with anxiety, makes you more confident, and makes you more ready to focus on what really matters on the day, right? So that's why we want to do this. Thank you for the comments as well. And yeah, now it's time to try it. These are in your folders. If you're listening because you're not here live, please do this on your own time and tell your coach and your Spark team when you've done it on WhatsApp, so that we can have a look, and let's see how far you can get. I think 25 minutes is probably okay, Lucas. So you know what to do. Find the Google Doc in your Google Drive, calmly go through it. After 20 minutes, roughly, you could check in and just see what's coming up in terms of questions, but you can't stop to ask questions anytime. That's why we're there, but we're not there to hover over you, over your shoulder. But anytime you want us to take a look into the Google Doc, we can have it open and we can actually come in and take a look. You can also screen share if you want, whether it's one of you or two, and also give feedback to each other. So let's just use the breakout time creatively, but mostly for doing, and then also for collaborating and for questions and feedback, okay? Enjoy, and see you in 25. So you can click into this section or any other section, click on Tools, Voice Typing. Yes, Ravi. And then click one more time on this thing here. Here it says English US. Maybe you can change that to English UK, or maybe even another language if you would rather dictate in your first language and then use Google Translate and then refine it. That's also an option. But hey, let's start with English UK. And now, instead of typing hands-free, it's like a Tesla car with AI driven. Yeah, but now it's my Google Doc is like high tech, and I can keep talking, and hopefully it understands what I'm saying. Oh my God, isn't that useful? And I stopped.
They have problems with names, don't they, usually?
Yeah, the Tesla, Adrian is in there. Adrian. But Lucas finds that funny because Jurgen Klopp, the Liverpool coach, likes the name of his own goalkeeper, who is called Adrian, and he screams his name sometime. But anyway, sidetracked. Because of this feature, you can save a lot of time. If you like to speak naturally to the topic, you could say, use this feature to save some time, and then you can edit it afterwards. So, you know, turn, you can see it has problems with names. Okay, maybe I'm not speaking clearly enough. You see the problem with that? Has a mission to enable refugees through the power of their own ideas. That's it. The problem is it keeps writing, so hopefully you're on your own, not talking to somebody, because otherwise it will record the whole dialogue into the document. But it could save you time. I sometimes do this, and then later I edit it, you know. Like Homo said, it doesn't really always understand me. Maybe it's my accent. But I don't know where Adrian came from in this, but the point is you could save a lot of time this way. Another thing you might think about is, we had these suggestions about the word count. You could mark the text that you've written in one of the boxes, like I just did, and then go to Tools, Word Count, and then it will tell you how long this is. So this is currently 43 words, okay? So roughly around the mark that we have here on the left-hand side. Sorry, that's actually, no, half of the mark. So here it says 80 words. So I could, you know, have double as many words in this section if I really want to follow those guidelines. But, you know, it's just an indicator. We would like to take a little break now after these tips and the Google Docking, and come back in 5 minutes. Because it's a relatively short session today, we're just going to take 5. Take a little breath. And if you want, think about something completely different, and we'll see you at 10 past. Thomas is back as well. One more thing about Google Docs. Comments and feedback. Always useful. Abed, if you don't mind, this time I'll just quickly go into yours as a demo. Or yeah, or I'll do it actually. I have a template, I guess I can do it on a template. Let's do it like this. Hopefully you can see my screen. Homos, Jane, Lucas, and Fred, myself, have all access to this Google Doc as well that you have been editing. Same with the Google Slides that you'll look at in a bit, or any other documents that you put in your folder, right? Because we want to collaborate with you online. If you want to get feedback from us, there's a few ways of doing it. Once you have a draft, either of the whole script or a part of it, you can send us a WhatsApp message in your group and just say, it's ready, please give me feedback. Simple. Or if you want very, very detailed feedback, you can highlight a certain part, like say this part. Then you click on this little add comment button here. And you can then tag somebody with @ and then, as you can see, I have a lot of contacts here. So I can say @Lucas, hi, mate. And could you please review this section? I am not sure about X, whatever that might be, or being particularly clear. And then if I say assign to Lucas, the difference is that Lucas will receive a notification via email to the email that he actually used, or the email that I'm particularly tagging here. Does that make sense? So you start with the ad, not like in a normal email, and then you can type the email in of the person, assign, and Lucas should now get an email notification in a couple of seconds, which would notify him of this. You can even have a dialogue here. Lucas can reply here. Lucas, if you don't mind coming in and trying that out. In the meantime, one more thing to show you is up here, you've got this button where you can click on editing and go to suggesting. And then if Lucas tries to change something in the document, he will suggest it, but not change it, and I will get the chance to accept it. So this is like redaction, right? You know this probably from Word. So that will be useful. So if you want feedback from us here on Google Docs or in a similar way on your Google Slides, either use on WhatsApp and just say, hey guys, please take a look. You can also tell us there what you need in terms of feedback, or you can use these features to do it. And yeah, that is how to use Google Doc for feedback, just in case you have a couple of weeks to actually prepare your scripts and your slides. So it would probably make sense to get feedback with 10 days to go before the event or a bit earlier, so that you have time to implement the feedback, and it's of course your choice. So yeah, we will move on from the scripts now, but we will make a connection to the slides, because a great slides document is super good to bring the story home. It's the visuals that transport your words. It's like the wagon of your words, and it brings them home. So of course, there's wonderful presentations without slides, right? Don't get me wrong. And if you really hate slides, or you don't like slides, or you don't have time, then you can also just talk to the camera. That's completely fine. In fact, I would suggest that you don't start your presentation with the slides live, because you do want to make the connection with people. So only bring the slides in after a couple of, like say a minute or so, or half a minute at the very least, so that they first can see you as a person a little bit bigger on screen. Once you go into slide mode, you'll be a little box there somewhere, and just like me now, hopefully that's how your screen is set up, that you see only a little Fred. Jane's saying totally tiny. So think about the medium of Zoom and how to use the slides, but they can be really powerful to explain things, to make things clear. A good pitch deck has a logical sequence of slides. That's really important. This sounds very German, but it is true. It is about structure. It is about sequence. In fact, it should match your narrative. So it should be aligned with the sequence of your script, or at least your outline in your head. Because a lot of people have slides and they have a narrative and they have nothing to do with each other. And then they're talking and they're clicking and clicking, and people crossing wires. Yeah. But as I'm doing right now, we're using visuals to explain things. Also, a good slide deck has great visuals and minimal text. So not too much text. In fact, this slide is not the very best example. It's nearly too much text. But you see this little visual here on the left-hand side? Imagine this is your slide. We help young graphic designers take the next step. Okay, it's a bit too literal for some of you, a bit on the nose, as they say, but at least it kind of gets the concept done, right? So clear, minimal text that aligns with what the image says, or the image aligns with what the text says. And instead of writing a novel here, you're just going for keywords, or at most one sentence, ideally, with a strong picture. It could be a photo you've taken, could be an illustration, could be a stock photo or illustration. We'll come to that in just a bit. Again, expressive photos and illustrations. Maybe this guy here, maybe we're talking about the food business, maybe we're talking about an environmental business, right? Or both. Use the visuals to convey the story and the problems that you're tackling, or the solution. And again, clear calls to action. So make it easy for people to link up. Great to have a QR code. Great to make clear what is the next step in keywords. I think that makes a good slide deck. There's more good tips, but let's stick to the basics. What we've done is we've aligned the pitch script with the pitch deck narrative already. So the structure in the template for the script and the structure in the template for the slides, Lucas and I have aligned. So they are currently in the same sequence, but you can shuffle them around in case you are changing the sequence based on your own requirements or style, right? So you can also change the sequence of the slides, but at the end, they need to work together. The slide deck is only there to transport your message. That's what it's for. You might think, where can I get good photos? I don't have time right now. Well, you might get some nice photos or videos if you come to the session on Monday. If you're in London, we'll talk to the Scotland-based friends about alternatives. But if you don't have time for that, you can get some nice photos done with Turn at some other point. So you can talk to us about it. Maybe you are good at photography or a friend is. And when you do your activities, you can take pictures. Ravi, I don't know if you offer this as a service, but we know you do photography. So, here's somebody in the community who could help as well, maybe. So Ravi, you can send them information about that in the chat if you want. In terms of taking free pictures, there's a cool service called Pexels. It's actually really free. There's not many conditions, and you can find some cool photos. So AJ, for you, perhaps you will write football community in the search box or football and kids. You don't have to use the word and, you just need football, kids, or food delivery or community activism, and search the photos that you find. Maybe you'll find something that's representative of your idea for the time being, until one day you have your own illustrations or photography. Okay, one step at a time. In terms of, if you have a brand already, you want to use your brand colors and your logo in your pitch deck, but it's not essential, right? Because you're starting out. And if you're not done with that yet, then that's fine. Some of you, Yusuf, I know you want to develop your brand. Maybe it'll be ready just in time. We'll see. But you can always update your pitch presentation deck after the 8th of June and then make it better, with your brand. So your slides should align with your brand as much as possible. That break we've already done. So I know we're now close to the finishing line. We have two options. Either we can, and that of course is more for the participants. I don't know, Holmes and Jane, if you have an extra 10 minutes, but Lucas, you and I are doing the breakouts anyway in terms of the facilitation in these breakouts, because we're only going to go into 2 breakouts. I wanted to ask Avid and Khalid and Yusuf and Emjit and Ruby whether they want to stay for an extra 10 minutes after 12:30, or whether we should keep it shorter and you prefer to work on your own time on the next activities. Any thoughts? So you can say in the chat box. I don't have a poll for it ready, but any preferences? Are you going to a next meeting? Are you in a rush? Otherwise, we can add 10 minutes. Feel free to all express yourself, whether verbally or on the chat box, so we kind of know. Virtual thumbs up. Ruby's fine. Fine. Yusuf has 10 extra minutes. Khalid, Abid, you good? Emjit has already spoken. Cool. All right then. Thanks, guys, for the extra time. Let's keep it to those 10 minutes. We will only do a 15-minute breakout, but what we do want to do is go into the Google Slides documents in your folders, in the same folder as the slides. If you haven't started a slide deck before, because Ravi and AJ and Mariam and Ruby, you've been working with Turn for longer, and so we've already worked with you on certain slide decks. We don't think you need to reinvent the wheel. In fact, you shouldn't. I also know Basel has started one already. And even, Abid, you mentioned earlier having started one. The structure that we have there, as Lucas says, gives you an indication of what you might want to use. You can copy paste slides from your original slide deck into this new template and replace slides there that are there as placeholders. Or you could just keep modifying your original slide deck and making it better, but looking at the template for reference. The choice is yours. I'll just quickly show you 2 features that will be useful with thinking about structure. So you'll find it in your folder. So I'll go here to ideas, slides, I guess. Let's find that. Yeah. Sorry, 1 second. Let's say I have a template here. I permit myself to look at, say, Arvids, sorry, and we'll just go in here into the folder. And you can get an overview by clicking on View, Grid View, and then you'll see roughly what slides are in here, but then you can click on plus or minus, and then you can kind of see the sequence, make it a bit smaller, and it's easier to take a look at, isn't it? So from left to right, from left to right, from left to right is the sequence, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. There's 10 slides. They should be self-explanatory in terms of what contents we're suggesting for them. But again, you can replace them. So for example, here, I could right-click here, and I could delete this one, and then it's gone. I could push it around to, say, the appendix down here, because I don't need it anymore, but I want it for safekeeping. Or you can keep it there and insert slides from another deck, copy-paste them, just copy them from the other slide like this. Copy, right-click, copy, and then click between 2 slides and click right and then paste. And then it's there. So that's how easy it is to copy from one Google slide to another, yeah? Hopefully the way they are set up is easy to use. You can replace all text and all placeholders, double-click on text to edit, right-click on image placeholders like these big blue ones to click on replace image, and then replace it from any source that is listed. You can do that with your logo as well if you have it, but if you don't have it yet, you can also just delete them like this. They're just placeholders, yeah? And this way you can get through it quite quickly. Remember, you can get free pictures on Pexels and such. We will post a link to that in the chat box before we go into the breakout. And then I would suggest just give it a go for 10 minutes. Give it a go for 10 minutes in the breakouts. There'll be 2 breakouts, one with Lucas, one with me. You can ask some technical questions. Don't go too deep down the rabbit hole on trying to make a slide perfect. Just try and edit 1 or 2 slides and think about how it aligns in the sequence with the script you have been starting, okay? So let's keep it simple for these 10 minutes. You're going to have to work on it anyway on your own time, and think more about getting used to replacing images, editing text, and perhaps changing the sequence of slides using the grid view. Again, go to View, Grid View, to sort slides in different order. If you want, say, Ravi and Ruvi and Mariam, you can think about copy-pasting slides from your other decks. Just open them on a different tab. Use those 10 minutes just to get used to the technical parts and ask some questions. The actual work on the slides needs to happen on your own time anyway. When we return, we will just briefly talk about next steps for 5, and then we'll let you go. So let's go.